Well, good morning and welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk, your Friday edition, right here on Podcast Radio US, and joined by myself, Katrina Madewell. I'm your host with my co-host, Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspections.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. I feel like we've done this more than once this week, but this is exciting times. We got new numbers. Oh my God, these numbers are so high.
And Tally.
That was a teaser. That was a teaser.
That was a
teaser.
Good to see you.
I did notice a little tweak there. Did you notice?
That was a teaser.
Oh, okay.
Then you thought Adam was going to let you introduce Adam.
We wouldn't forget Adam.
You can't forget him with that lovely Marlin pink shirt.
I actually like your shirt.
I do like it too.
Thank you.
Okay. I liked it when you wore something different too every once in a while. It's a nice
Yeah, there's the dark green and the light green version of the Beryl shirt.
It's better for his mind if he doesn't focus on anything other than engineering.
Yeah.
It's actually a proven thing that if high active people don't have to think about what clothes to wear, it leads to less stress in their day.
And more productivity.
And it's actually proven studies.
Yeah. All right. Well, today's topic is going to be 8 reasons to use an agent in your real estate transaction. There are some changes coming this year, and those will be interesting as we navigate closer to the summer months. I'm sure we'll be talking more about that. And so our guest rearranged, I think, picked another date like 3 weeks out. So you have us today. And one of the topics
Well, this leads me to a very interesting question, which we'll get to before you get to the list of 8, which is directly related to it.
Okay. What?
No, we got to go through the numbers first. That's another teaser. First segment's all about teasers.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Radio. I appreciate that. All right, the new listings on the market coming in at 1087. Mr. Memory, what was it last week?
Oh, it was below 1,000, but it was close. It was like 993.
So that's interesting. We're noticing more listings coming on the market, which is normal in these spring months. Yeah. May, as we're approaching summer. The number of price decreases coming in at 1453.
That's pretty steady.
Notice how I had to write those a little bigger next to the numbers?
Oh, yeah, I can't read those.
Okay, good. Glad it's not just me. Number of sold listings coming in at 1,062. So that's pretty in line with our new listings, which is good. And our pendings are down.
Pendings are down.
Those have been higher. We're coming in at 958 this week.
Yeah,
what was that last week? Do you remember?
It was outpacing new listings. So I believe it was over 1,000. They were neck and neck for a while.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me to see the new listings are slightly higher than the pendings.
The pendings have been higher.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, but not this week. So. And I'm noticing when I pull comps in neighborhoods and I'm starting to analyze the data to put a price on a home with a CMA, there's a lot more active and a lot less pending. So I've noticed that. There was only one comp search I did this week on a house that is coming up that had one active, handful of pending, and pretty good amount of sold.
So the trend continues where we're seeing more houses come onto the market than are disappearing.
That are pending, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the trend is continuing, but what I like about this trend that's continuing is not only are we seeing more new houses than we are houses that are disappearing from the market, we're seeing more of them. So it would be one thing if we had like 600 new listings and 500 went pending, but we're seeing stronger numbers. And maybe it's that psychological effect when you cross a threshold. Now we're dealing with 4 digits instead of 3. 1,001 sounds a lot larger than 999.
It's true.
You know, it's only off by 2, and I'm serious about that.
That's true.
So, but the trend is still, it's positive. It's not like we have more new listings than pending, but the market's still doing poor. It's more new listings than pending, but the market is stronger, which actually flies in the face of the article I sent you earlier this week.
Did I miss the article, or is this the next dad joke?
No. This is a legitimate article. I sent you one that the U.S. Today published a study that said Tampa was one of the...
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, it was for all the housing markets in Florida, Tampa is the worst as far as declining.
Oh, yeah, we're strong. We're still very, very strong compared to many other markets. So I also calculated our absorption rate. I did this manually from MLS data right on the first. And we are at a 3.9 month supply of homes for all the counties, single family.
So we're still
I did look at
up.
condos. I probably should, but we're 3.9 and we are tricking up. Yep.
Yeah, you shouldn't look at condos. Condos absorption rate is like 9 or 10 months.
I'm sure.
And you said 6 is balanced.
6 to 12 months is considered a balanced supply of homes, yes.
That's a big swath. I mean, if 0 to 6 is seller's market, 6 to 12 balanced, 12 to 18 buyer's market? Is that
Anything north of 12 is a buyer's market.
wow?
Doesn't matter where it is.
Couldn't imagine listing something and still waiting on it to sell 12 months later.
Well, it's not necessarily 12 months later. It's just the supply of homes, meaning buyers have a lot to choose from. So if you're not super competitive, they're going to pick a different home. That's what that means.
Well, I mean, it can take on average 12.
It can take longer. Yeah, it can take longer. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is when you look historically speaking, and I'd have to pull the data on this, but I'm going to guess that my estimation is probably really close. When you look at just historically speaking, taking all the markets into consideration, since we've had, good automated data, right, like MLS and things like that, I would say the average time frame to sell a home probably would be at least 3 or 4 months, at least, historically speaking, maybe a little longer.
That's not bad.
If you're higher, you're unique. Yeah. So, and as we move into this little bit of a shifting market, I tell people all the time, the sellers, buyers are not going to buy just anything. They want a good, cared for home. They want all of your stuff updated. The first questions they're asking are the age of the roof, the HVAC. If it's an old home, they want to know if the plumbing and the electrical has been updated. They're looking at the hot water heater. They're looking at all of those things to figure out if they should even go see the house.
So, question, if I wanted to sell my house in late August, early September of 2025, I need to list it when?
I mean, we don't know what the market's going to be at that time.
Well, this is the point of this radio show, is to predict the market. So
it is, and you have
February maybe, because you're an older home.
I mean, you have to consider a lot of factors, right? If you move, where are you going to go? What's the options there? There's a lot of statistics that show we are tricking up to that, definitely towards a balanced market, which means it's going to take a bit longer to sell. There's going to be more negotiations in price, different things like that. And I had something specific I was going to say, and it left me. I hate it when that happens. Anyway, it doesn't matter, I guess.
Well, it does matter, because that's a real question.
No, I was going to say
You've already looked at my house.
I did, and I was going to say something specific to that, and it's escaped me. Dang it. It'll come back to me. I'm going to think on it. I'll think on it. It'll come back to me.
So she mentioned earlier about the extra 4-point components. Buyers are looking at the roofs, the water heater, the AC, the plumbing. What are you seeing on the insurance side? Are the insurance companies getting stricter on those 4 points, or?
Yes. So a lot of carriers now, they're going to have age restrictions on water heaters. They want to see those water heaters 10 years or newer.
Which is crazy, because some of these old tickers are like 20
still
years and they're
working
running
fine,
great.
but
You change your sacrificial rod every 5 to 7 years. Your water heater can last 30.
But, I have some where they will flat out exclude water unless all the plumbing's been replaced if it's more than 30 years. So instead of that $10,000 limited water damage, you're seeing it just excluded. But and same thing with the AC. They want to see that AC updated as well, a lot of them. So it just depends on the carrier. Obviously, Citizens, they don't have any age requirements on any of that stuff, but it does need to be in good working order. So, your older homes. Now, the good news is in the marketplace right now, a lot of carriers are opening up. So as that, as there is more competition out there, they're going to start opening up and, allowing more things that maybe they wouldn't have in the past, so long as it's clean, right? Like, if it's a 15-year-old water heater, but it was tankless and it was taken care of, that kind of stuff, it's a different conversation than, a 30-year-old one that probably is past its prime.
Is it really a different conversation? Because on the roof side of things, it doesn't matter if you have a 15-year shingle, a 30-year shingle, or a 50-year shingle.
Well, you don't have a tank.
Treat it all as shingle. I mean, these insurance companies still have those boxes where, unless they have those extra check boxes in their drop-down menu, a water heater is a water heater is a water heater.
A lot of them ask if it's tankless or not. So that's coming too. So the underwriting's getting more, nuanced. And
just for the listeners out there, if you have a water heater that's tankless on a smaller footprint home, that's usually the way to go. If you can have your centrally located water heater, that when you have the home layout, that usually has the kitchen and the master or primary bathroom that are near each other, or the kitchen hall bathroom near each other, you're like 1,500 square foot home, a tankless water heater might be the way to go. When you get your larger homes with your bigger footprints, you end up needing to install what's called a repeater, because by the time the water leaves the tankless and then gets to you, it might start to cool down again. because of the way those water heaters work. So you might need a repeater on those bigger footprints. So if you have one with like a 3,000 square foot home where your kitchen, hall, bathrooms on one side of the house and your primary is on the opposite, you might need a repeater at the primary to make sure that you have the water you need.
I never thought about that. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you why you were recommending for a smaller home, but you just answered it.
Yeah, definitely smaller homes, like any of these historic homes, these Sears Roebuck catalog homes, Kenwood, Seminole, Tampa Heights.
Which sounds crazy to me that you used to buy a house out of a catalog.
Yeah, you used to buy
So
that.
true.
Showed up for $600 to $800, stick built, put it together. But those type of homes, those small footprints, really benefit from the tankless water heater. The larger footprint homes, your box builders, your Brandons, your Valoricos, your Fishhawks, they really suffer when you go tankless water heater. Which is the funny part is you're now seeing the tankless water heaters on your larger footprint homes because people want them standard, not realizing they need those repeaters.
At what size, speaking of that, similar concept there, what size house do you typically start seeing 2 AC units?
Well, there's been a lot of advancement with home tightness over the past couple of years. It used to be the formula was for every 750 square feet of living space, you needed a ton of AC.
Okay.
That used to be the formula. That's changed drastically. We're now seeing with using commercial technology in the residential home and in dampers and splitters, we're seeing a 3.5 ton unit do a whole house. Whereas before it used to be another rule of thumb, 1 unit per floor. You live in an older house, especially if you live in an older house, 1 unit per floor, or even these newer ones, 1 unit per floor. Just easier to keep the downstairs central tribal living areas separate from the bedroom living areas. And the idea behind that was not only does hot air rise, but the other idea behind that was you're downstairs in the living areas during certain hours, and you're upstairs in the sleeping areas during other hours. Mm-hmm. So it allowed you to regulate more. But now you've got nests, you've got load controls, you've got all these other items that allow you to be able to set those different temperatures in the different rooms.
I was going to ask you about the repeaters, what those look like, what it's like to install them, how costly they are, where they go.
They can be $800 to $1,200 a repeater, and you would ideally like to install them within a wall cavity so you don't see them.
So you have to take out drywall to put
Pretty
those in.
much. I mean, that's one type of repeater. Because you got to think, it is a repeater. It is something that's in line that's giving that a boost. It
is as big as the tank?
No.
The tankless?
It's a lot smaller because it's just a repeater. And that's why it's cheaper
So
as well.
what's the technology behind that? Like, help me understand how that works, the mechanics of it.
That sounds like an awesome topic
know?
to talk about just after the break.
Just curious. On
But
that.
the tankless water heater, basically your primary water heater is going to be a heat exchanger. It heats up, and then that water, those rods that are hot heat the water that's cool, and that water gets sent. So, I mean, to some extent, that is still what the repeater is doing, just on a much smaller basis.
Okay, so that makes it travel a little faster. Sounds like.
Yeah, not really traveling faster. It's just you're heating it up closer to the source.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. Well, today's topic is 8 tips on why you should use a real estate pro like me in your transaction or someone with experience, because when you're buying or selling your biggest asset, it's probably a good idea to have a pro that knows what they're doing, that's sold at least a couple of 2 or 3 homes. And it's interesting. I had a conversation last night with a lady that has her property listed with another person, which I have to be careful on that, but I got invited out to talk about that. And the property is very unique and it requires a different skill set. It's not like you're selling a 3-2 in a neighborhood. It's just totally different. And I was telling her that 80% of the agents in this market today, I see what it looks like. It's the repeaters.
Yeah, it's just a really small. Looks like basically the size of a very large thermostat.
And this ream is $400 on Amazon. All
There you
right.
Your unique home. There's only 80%.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam.
Somebody was listening to the radio show
So
today.
the point is, what I was trying to say is we're headed into a shifting market, obviously, right? We're talking earlier about moving into a balanced market. And the fact of the matter is 80% of the agents in this market today have never even seen a balanced market, let alone a buyer's market.
Right.
And so the way you have to operate in those markets is completely different. It requires more skill to sell properties. You can't just put it in the MLS and pray that another agent's going to bring a buyer, especially with some of the changes that are coming in, I would say this summer. We're going to see a lot of things change. A lot of agents I think are going to drop off by the wayside. But we'll start on tip number 1 when we come back right after the break. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. We'll be back with Leo and Adam right after this break. And our off-air number, one more time, 813-377-2775. If you haven't already, subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and listen for future shows. We'll be back.
From home, this is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. I now can ask my question to Katrina about real estate agents.
What you got?
So I'm the typical buyer. Mm-hmm. I now know that I have to pay my own buyer's agent fees. Mm-hmm. I already do my research to know what's available for sale because I'm addicted to Zillow or Trulia or any of those others. I can contact the seller's agent directly to look at the property. Why do I need a buyer's agent to begin with at this point if I have to pay them myself?
Yeah, I think this goes back. I mean, definitely things are going to change. And I think the misnomer is that buyers are going to have to pay the fee directly themselves. And they may. They may on some properties. Is buyer agent compensation going to go away? Absolutely not, especially as we're moving into a shifting market. It's just what they won't allow anymore is that. So, for example, let me just tell you how we're dealing with it now so I can finish answering your question. If we're working with you as an agent, we don't know if sometimes these builders are offering $1,000 in buyer agent compensation. Sometimes they're offering $2,000. Sometimes it's $3,000. Sometimes there's a bonus. We don't know what the compensation is going to be when we get started. And the interesting thing about buyer's agents, especially good ones, is they do it really for the love of people and the love of home ownership. And so I can speak for myself personally. If that buyer agent compensation has been low, let's say as low as $1,000, which we have definitely seen, especially in an extreme seller's market, I personally have not went back and ever charged the buyer that difference. It was just, and did I lose money on that? Absolutely I did. But most of my business is referred and it's past clients. Most buyers are already tight in terms of how much cash they need to bring to the table. It's going to be hard to add on a professional fee on top of that. So I just want to start saying that. And what is going to change in the future is we're not going to be able to do that. And so we're going to have to set our fee in the beginning based on the services we intend to perform. So going back to answer your question is, what value does a buyer's agent bring when you're doing your own research? You could go to the agent. And I think go to the listing agent directly, which is what you said, and you can. We're expecting that. So from the listing agent perspective, which I predominantly work on these days, we are anticipating to have to add in a showing agent that will be on a salary to basically calculate for that. So either way, the money has to come from somewhere. People don't just show up for free. It doesn't happen. So essentially, to answer your question, what value does a buyer's agent bring? Well, I think it's going to be predominantly tied to what services are they bringing to the table, right?
Well, no, I know there's a lot of value for the buyer's agent, arranging the inspections, arranging access, being able to contact the seller directly, being able to do negotiations. But now I'm the buyer. I don't know any better. I can do my own research on what house is available for sale. So
to answer your question from that perspective is, yes, you're going to have to agree to pay for the fee, but it doesn't mean that you're actually going to have to pay it. Does that make sense?
It makes, as long as there's money in the contracts.
I mean, and I'm expecting we're going to see some changes. It'll be interesting to see what happens as we move into that, because technically this whole rule violates one of the Realtor Code of Ethics for the National Association of Realtors, which is you can't use an offer of compensation as a negotiating tool for an offer. So I don't know if they're going to have to get rid of that provision or how that's going to work. But I do think it's going to give all parties involved choice. So I think there's going to be more transparency around commissions and dollars being traded and all that sort of stuff, which is fine. But let's say, we'll just go with the status quo because they think every buyer's agent makes 3%, which I can tell you is not true. But that's what the whole lawsuit was about. So we'll go with that. We'll just roll with that, assuming that's true, which we know it isn't.
And then there's the other side of the equation too, and we see this from.
Well, let me finish answering your question really quick, and then you can do it. So let's say it's 3%. Really, I just want to stay on this thought because I'll forget, and I'll be like, I don't know what I was saying. Let's say it's 3%. You agree to hire me as a buyer's agent at 3%. We go and now we're showing different properties. We don't know if they're going to offer zero compensation, $1, 2%, 3%, or 5%. Okay. And I want to use that spectrum for a reason because there's an answer behind that. We contract at 3%. And that's what you're agreeing to pay me as a fee. Now we're going to go look at properties. And let's say, I'm going to take you to the other end of the spectrum. Let's say we end up looking at new builds, which this will tie in perfectly to our show for next week. We're looking at new builds, and that builder is paying a 3% plus a $5,000 bonus. That's what that builder is paying. And we have seen all these different properties, and you as the buyer have decided this is the right home for you. You like it, you want it. Now we're going to have to say, well, fantastic, because you agreed to pay me 3%. And guess what? The builder is going to take care of that fee at 3%. And there's a $5,000 bonus, which you, by the way, Mr. Buyer, are now going to get that bonus.
Yeah, it could potentially work in that direction too.
It's absolutely going to work in that direction. So once you know what the fee is, if there's anything above and beyond, it's going to go to the buyer directly. It will be a credit for the buyer.
Now, what happens on the flip side? Say the seller says, "Oh, well, I'm going to give you 1%." Now, the buyer has to come up with the other 2%.
So on the flip side, technically speaking, yes, the buyer would have to come up with the 2%. Now, what I will tell you is, I think there's going to be a lot of room for negotiations, and I think if you have a super strong agent that is an expert in this field, for one, anything that you do pay them, if you do have to pay them anything at all, are going to be worth every penny they're paid in negotiations. I can tell you that is true for myself. But what I anticipate will happen is they are going to negotiate with the seller and their agent directly for their commission. I expect that to happen. And if they don't, and you don't have a strong buyer's agent, then yes, you're going to be on the hook to pay whatever that difference is. Whether that can be modified or not later, I don't know. It has to be, because I can't imagine a buyer is getting to the finish line and they're short $2,000 to close and the agent wants to help and now they can't. I just can't imagine that would be true, but who knows how this is going to shake out. The truth is none of us know, and the DOJ is still in it, and there's still a lot of things being hashed out, and nobody knows how it's going to go down yet.
Do you foresee any situation where you might have to pay a realtor a retainer?
Yeah, I absolutely think that. Yeah, if you're going to be out looking at properties, and it's interesting because the Z Monster is already trying to take a different approach on this, and we'll see how that works out. But I do think you'll probably have to pay a retainer, especially if you're out looking at homes and that agent is spending their time and they're running out every Saturday instead of spending time with their family. They're out with your family showing properties. I mean, time is valuable to everyone, right? So people's time are worth money.
Do you think? Is there maybe a home price range where you would see that starting, or do you think that's going to be kind of across the board?
I think the lower first-time home buyers are going to say, I can't afford it, I'm not going to do it. They're just going to close their mind and not even think about the fact that it could be negotiated in to the deal where they don't actually physically pay for it out of their pocket.
Right.
But I think definitely on the higher ends, they're absolutely going to have a buyer's agent because they want.
Well, I meant the retainer type stuff. You think that obviously the low end people aren't going to be able to do it. But
depends. I mean, when you look at a market like we've had, and just the fact that if you're trying to, I know how hard it is for us to get a hold of the listing agents. Sometimes they don't answer the phone for days. The voicemail is full. The customer service is terrible. If we have to chase them that much as real estate professionals, where there's accountability for them to answer the phone at a certain time through not only the board of realtors but also their broker. Do you think they're going to answer the phone for a buyer that they have no relationship with that wants to see a property on Saturday when they're out on the boat?
Probably not.
It's not going to happen. So I think they're going to have to pay some sort of a retainer as a commitment to that person to be in it for the whole. I mean, they're going to get frustrated. Buyers are, unless they're looking at one or two homes and they're going direct and picking it, they are going to get frustrated with the process of what it takes to actually. They have no idea what it takes to do this, and so when buyers are doing that on their own, it's going to be a whole new ball game. And I don't know where I should ping with this next.
I have the question I still had beforehand.
Okay. Is this related or?
Yeah, but you can go.
Mine's unrelated.
Okay, so I was going to ask. God, now I lost.
Now
my train
you did it.
Now I did it.
I still have the question. I can hit.
I'll come back.
Okay, go.
So I'm going to tie this back to Senate Bill 4D when the condo bill went into effect, mandating the reserve studies.
Yeah, after the Surfside collapse.
There was a specific condo rider that was created that needs to be part of the real estate transactions, and that was added to the contracts for real estate transactions. It took 3 years to get that condo rider written. So now that it's written, it's based on Senate Bill 4D, which is in direct conflict with the two bills that were published afterwards to fix Senate Bill 4D, which is Senate Bill 154 and 1178. So now we have a condo rider that's in conflict with the original, it's in conflict with the bill now. So I know you guys don't write your own contracts. What happens in this scenario where the law goes into effect in July and you don't have proper contracts for 2 to 3 years?
Typically, what I've seen, if it conflicts or it's an issue with where it would make the contract not make sense or something like that, Florida realtors typically will hustle to get that updated version approved and dropped in our software.
3 years.
I mean,
it's those 3 years on the condo one. This is one drastically changing your commission structure.
But that did not technically go into effect. It went into effect where condos have to start doing it. But there was like a lag indicator on that particular part with the
We'll
buyer.
resume this after the break.
Yes, 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. We'll be back with Adam's insurance tip of the week.
Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Adam Talley with Talley Insurance, and for the tip of the week, as we're going to kind of stay on theme here, it's always good to go to an independent agent, similar to going to a realtor. You need somebody that is an advocate for you in the marketplace that can shop all the options for you, especially these days on homeowners. We're seeing the homeowners rates go down. We've actually had some renewals come back that were less than the previous year, which is amazing. But in that same respect, if you haven't shopped in a while on home, we're saving people big money. Like I had a guy this week, his premium was $11,000 and we got it down to $5,000. So
wow.
that's $500 a month if you're looking at it from a mortgage standpoint.
Are you insuring any of the short-term rental stuff like the Airbnbs, the VRBOs?
If they are newer, we do have some options.
What do you mean newer? That built year is newer?
Built, yeah, because the problem you run into, there's only a handful of carriers that will do it. So if it's a if it's a 100-year-old short-term rental on the beach, I don't have anything for that. But if it's a newer build, we have multiple carriers that will take a short-term. So it just depends, and area dependent as well. Pasco County still has
and if you're buying new construction, don't let the builder pick. You have the right. They kind of like slide it in there.
Right.
Go get your own insurance quote.
Right. So those builders, those agents that sell for the builders, they're just trying to sell you the cheapest thing. And if it's a brand new house, you can get a great deal and get good coverage. You don't need to start chopping off arms and legs to save $50. Like, it doesn't matter at that point. So make sure you double check on and ask them questions if you are going to use the builders. Insurance agent, ask them questions.
I have a horror story about using the builder's package.
They literally just throw it in there.
Yeah.
Like they're expecting you to do it. They really do. And it's like, I got it. I'm going to take care of it on my own.
Right. What's your horror story?
So,
and then I have a question to draw us back in.
I can't talk about the address, but what I will say, there was a property, a builder was going to build a home, and they went out of business. So they sold the lots and everything to one of the big box builders. Mm-hmm. The big box builder brought in their team. They brought in their insurance agents, their warranty people, their real estate agents, their inspectors, their engineer to sign off on everything. So they built the home off these plans that they self-approved. They built the home. And 3 years after the fact, the home's having a lot of issues. Now, this is one of those in a flood zone. The home was slightly elevated with a crawl space. They didn't properly build the crawl space. So we get hired because we're friends with an architect who is friends with that builder. And we go out there and we're like, how did this get approved? So basically what ended up happening was in the flood zone, you're supposed to have a crawl space that's no deeper than a certain number of feet. Like your whole crawl space can only be 4 feet from top to bottom. And your vents have to be no more than 2 feet off the bottom. And your vents can also be no more than 1 foot off grade, which is on the other side of the crawl space. So the builder decided to cut some corners, and they didn't properly fill and grade the property, so you ended up with a 5-foot crawl space. So what that basically means is now the walls are buckling, there's a lot of cracks, and they didn't have the vents. They put the vents at the bottom. Then they decided to just punch vents into the wall. So what they were thinking was going to be a simple fix of how to properly put the vents in the wall turns out to be no one knows how to fix this. We have a crawl space that's too big, and you might be thinking, hey, we're just going to bring dirt in. But you can't do that there either because it's in a flood zone and you can't bring fill in. So how did this happen? Well, the builder used their engineer that sat in the trailer to sign off on the plans. They used a superintendent who didn't know how to build in a flood zone, and they just were blowing and going. And so everyone involved in the transaction was working directly for the builder, so there was no actual third-party neutrality here saying, hey, you guys are about to put a $750,000 home that now probably needs to be torn down.
Wow. So my question, though, is like, how did that...
My question for you is, would insurance cover any of that?
Construction defect?
That's what I'm wondering.
The builder's insurance would have to pay for it, not the homeowners.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds like a dogfight.
I don't see how the homeowner's insurance would cover that. It's a clear construction defect.
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, they had to get an elevation certificate. Did the person that did the elevation certificate not notice these things?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the elevation certificate...
I guess it's only talking about the vents, right?
It's talking about the height of the...
So it's a foot higher than it needed to be, so it's good. So the flood insurance is like $100.
Yeah, I mean, the elevation certificate is what it is, but no one knows how to read it.
Is it that bad where it's got to be torn down? There's no engineer fix you can...
We can't come up with one because it's like...
It's buckling.
How do we raise the crawl space without the ability to put fill in there? We can't put concrete in there because the purpose of the crawl space is to percolate the water down. Mm-hmm. So what is the fix? I have actually lost sleep over this trying to come up with a fix.
It sounds like you need to tear the...
I don't want to tear the building down, but I just can't think of a solution.
Sounds awful.
It is awful.
Well, that's why you're an expert witness.
No, this isn't even an expert witness. This is the builders
you know?
wanting to make things right, hiring us.
And you don't know how to fix it.
You're like, I don't know. So I'll continue to hit that one back. But that is the danger of...
Update on that later.
That is the danger of using the company store when doing a new build without any independent representation.
Yeah, definitely.
So kind of bringing it back to it, kind of tying into that last thought there. Is there ever a situation where like a for sale by owner is good? Because we're talking about the 8 reasons. FSBO.
What do you mean where they're good? That's a broad question.
Well, so like we're talking about 8 reasons why you need an agent. Mm-hmm. Is there ever a reason where you wouldn't need an agent? I guess is my question.
I'm selling to my aunt.
I mean, if you already have all of your terms and everything buttoned up, like if the buyer and seller have already negotiated everything themselves, like in terms of the price and the closing date and all the things, and they think they're okay, then I guess you could hire an attorney or you could even hire an agent really to write the contract still. But I guess that would be the time maybe you wouldn't need an agent if you're already going back to I'm selling it to my aunt, right?
Yeah, I'm selling it to my aunt. I can get an attorney involved. Just have an attorney for the contracts.
I would definitely highly recommend you having a professional of some sort write the contract, whether it's an attorney or an agent. You know, you should be able to pay an agent a fee to write the contract, but don't try to write that contract yourself. I wouldn't recommend that, even if it is your aunt.
I mean, this is a great question for our title people who are our sponsors, who happens to be...
Well, we have Insured Title Agency and Island Title.
One of them, but I mean, if you're doing I'm selling to my aunt, yeah, the easiest way to do it would be a quitclaim deed, which is like,
do not do
but I do not do that because that clouds title later on, and they can fully answer all those questions.
It could cloud title. It's not necessarily going to cloud title, but there's definitely title. We see title defects a lot when people try to prepare their own deeds.
Yes.
So I wouldn't do that. I would definitely get title insurance, even if you're transferring in between your aunt. And I would definitely have a professional write that contract. I would not skip that. But, this is where an agent that has hundreds or thousands of transactions, they're going to see things and know things that you don't. I mean, I had an agent, not an agent, a longtime friend of mine that was just buying a little piece of land. It was pretty cheap. This has been several years back now, but it's about $5,000. And he was like, "Oh, I don't need anything. I just need a deed. I don't need title insurance, do I?" I said, "Well, it's up to you. Certainly you can buy it without title insurance, but I'll tell you this, are you willing to lose your $5,000? If there's a title defect, are you willing to lose that $5,000? Because it could very much happen. You would be out the property and the money. So if you're willing to take that risk, then sure, don't get title insurance. But if you're not, I would get title insurance.
Even if you buy at auction, you can still get title insurance, and I still recommend.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's a lot of our listeners that actually buy at auction, but if you happen to buy at auction, tax deed sales
or any other
mortgage
funky
foreclosures,
way, right? Any funky way that doesn't have an agent.
You should be able to get, as long as the property is changing hands, you should be able to get the title insurance. Now, what about seller financing? If you do seller financing, can you get title insurance?
Yeah, you can get title insurance at any time.
Because
it's still changing hands.
Well, on seller
the financing, that's how you come up with the money.
That's true.
Seller's holding the note, the ownership is still passing.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
People get it confused with their.
Oh, different states. I mean, like there's other
the seller's the bank.
Yeah, there's other states where if you do seller financing, the seller holds on to the note until.
Well, that's because we have title theory states and we have lien theory states. And here in Florida, we're a lien theory state, which means you get a deed upon closing, and then the bank or whoever seller records a mortgage and a note against the property that secures the collateral.
Except
so it's a lien
for vehicles, because vehicles, the dealer, the mortgage company, or what is it called technically at that point? The lease company,
the DMV,
not the lien holder. The when I get I'm using Citrus Bank, they're the bank on my car purchase. They actually hold title.
That's title theory.
Yeah. So even in Florida, it depends on what you're buying.
But for real estate, no. For real estate, we're lien theory. Places like Georgia, they're title theory. You don't get a deed until you pay it off.
Nice.
Which is kind of like a car. What you're saying.
Almost sounds like, rent to own almost.
I mean, and technically in Florida, there are lease option things, but it can get very, very dicey. And I've seen attorneys involved in these, and it's not pretty. Thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. So let's run through these 8 tips really quick. I'm going to go through them quick.
45 minutes into the show.
There's not a bunch of meat here. So number one is they act as an expert guide. Right? So we are familiar with the market. We're familiar with the requirements, what's normal, what isn't. So a prime example, Leo, let's talk about title insurance. In our area, it's very customary for the seller to pay title insurance. If you go down to Miami, the buyer pays that. So that's what I mean by an expert guide. They know those things that are in one market to the next. And they also can help you avoid delays and costly mistakes that could really cost you thousands. Not to mention there's a bunch of jargon involved in a real estate transaction. So tip number 2, they offer an objective information and opinion. So basically, they're going to give you an unbiased eye on this and essentially help you with your buying objectives while you're staying within your budget and answer a lot of questions you have. Could be about zoning, utilities, amenities, contractors, and so much more.
So kind of question drawing back into what we were talking about earlier, do you see I see an obvious scenario where you might have an agent that's pushing a buyer to a specific house because they're going to get more.
Not going to happen anymore. Because they're going to have to tell the buyer how much the compensation is, and they're going to say, "Hey, Mr. Buyer, we're going to use our same example. They're paying me 3%. Mr. Buyer, I know we're contracted for my professional fee to be 3%, and this particular house that you inquired about, they're only paying 2%, or they're only paying 1%. Do you still want to go see it based on that?" Mm-hmm. Right, and the buyer would get the choice whether or not they want to see it.
So on the flip side of that, if I have a buyer's agent, they're taking 2%, seller's offering 3%.
That buyer's going to get 1%.
And I just get that right on my closing, right? So that actually
it should be, yeah.
So that's like cash from someone else
Not
at
cash,
closing.
But a credit.
That lowers the HUD statement.
Yeah, should be. We'll get into dicey things in terms of like maximum seller concessions based on the type of loan it is. Like conventional is only 3%. FHA VA 6. It'll be interesting to see how this goes down. And we have limited time in our last break. We are going to get through these other ones really quickly. But number 3, really quick before we roll into the break, is we give you an expanded search power. So not only stuff on the multiple listing service, which you will see on the other third-party sites, not everything, but most things. And that could change too, by the way. There's some talk on that. But we also have access to off-market stuff that is not listed, period. It's a pocket listing or a private listing, and then also things that were on the market but are no longer on the market. So a good real estate agent is going to research more options than just the stuff you see online. 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. When we come back, we'll zip through the other 5 tips and answer any questions you have. Just call or text our offer number, 813-377-2775. This is Tampa Home Talk, and we'll be right back.
Welcome home. This is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection, making sure that if we have a list of 8, that we never get through the whole list of 8.
We will get through the list of 8.
It took us 45 minutes before we got to the first one.
We had other stuff we want to talk about. It's okay.
That's normally happened. That's why I don't use outlines.
Well, number 4, they stand in your corner during negotiations. This is a big one, Leo, and we'll talk about this. It's everything from price to repairs to the possession date. What happens if the seller's still there on your closing date when you're trying to move in, and all these crazy things that are required, not to mention your deadlines and the due diligence that has to happen because you're bound by that contract. So there's so many details in that. And it's overwhelming when they get these inspection reports, Leo. They don't know how to read them, right? They don't know what something looks. It might be red on your inspection report, but it could be a 50-cent piece that's $200 to have an electrician fix, right?
What does happen if, say, it's closing day and those people that are selling, they're not out?
Depends. We've had that happen more
Cash
than
for
once.
keys.
No, we've had that happen more than once. And typically what we're going to do is recommend that all parties still sign so that there's no breach in contract, but they can't fund anything or give the seller their money or fund anything until the seller is out. So they typically got to bust, hustle, and get out by that day. So I've had this where my sellers aren't even out, and I have to get movers in there or whatever we got to do to keep that moving along because they should have been out.
But back to this negotiations part, item number 4. I mean, it's so important to have a less interested party doing negotiations, because if you're
emotional,
buying a home is an emotional purchase. You get too invested, you get too heated. That can have negotiations fall apart. It's always good to have that. Oh yeah. That calmer person that's not as emotionally tied to the deal, that knows, that can advise you to walk away and find something else, that can advise you to find a different property.
You have to keep everybody grounded. That's a big part of what a real estate pro does.
I mean, a lot of times you get caught up in negotiations and you get caught up in that chase. And then that becomes the driving force, and then you're hunting something you shouldn't be hunting, and you're chasing unreasonable offers, and you go through with it because you have no one advising you against it.
Right, and you won't know till you know, and then at that point, who are they going to sue if they didn't have an agent? The seller? The attorneys will be after them next. It'll happen. But all right, tip number 5 is an ensure an up-to-date experience, and this piggybacks right on with what you were saying earlier, Leo. And I'll just start with the premise that most people only buy a few homes in their lifetime. And essentially it can be several years pass in between from the last time they did it to the next time they buy and sell. And we were just talking about the laws and the regulations and the ordinances changing and things changing, especially in condos, right? And your real estate practitioner, a good one, has done hundreds, if not thousands of transactions. Like me, I have thousands literally at this point. I wish I had started counting back in the day and had a real number, but I don't have it. I just know it's been thousands.
You can get like a little over so many people served.
So many people
served. I guess. All right, number 6, provide a fair and ethical treatment. Okay, so most realtors are just that. So they're bound by the Code of Ethics for the National Association of Realtors to provide professionalism and serve the interests of the client while protecting the public. So it's not a bad thing. And new builds, don't forget the agent on the other side of the deal. They represent the builder, not you. And tip number 8 is your realtor can save you money, not cost you money. So the few bucks that you may or may not have to pay this buyer's agent can literally save you tens of thousands of dollars if you're passing up this valuable resource with an agent with a lot of experience. I mean, you were talking about...
And that's a great tie into next week's show. I mean, next week's show is all about, like, people are going to buy a $500,000 home, a $700,000 home. Do they want to spend $500 to $600 to know what they're buying? Do they want to spend $500 or $600, which is less than 0.05% of the purchase price, to find out, should they even be purchasing it or should they be renegotiating it?
And that's tip number 8. So helping through inspections, there are those key inspections that you want to have them attend. We'll spot those red flags. And in the long run, the third-party inspector. So next week's show is all about if you're building a new home, why you need to have an inspection and when, because there's different points that are really, really important.
You need to call Leo. He knows everything.
Oh, we're going to dive into that next week.
Next week's show is awesome, and we'll talk about the true value and what these builders are doing to cut corners on your new build homes.
Yeah, you won't believe some of the stuff we're going to share in next week's show.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, you're going to enjoy it.
And the best part, if you're watching this week's show on the streamers, which you've smashed the like and subscribe button, and you happen to be late to the party on this episode, you probably can watch the next one right after it.
Yep, there you go. You can binge watch Tampa Home Talk.
You can binge watch Tampa.
God, what a great idea for a Saturday afternoon.
You know, if you're buying a home, you probably are binge watching Tampa Home Talk. I'm just saying. Like, who doesn't do that?
It'd be smart if you did.
Speaking of which, on Saturdays I started binge watching Zombie House Flipping because another one of our episodes aired.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I want to watch it again. I did watch it. You'll be so proud of me. I actually watched it.
This past weekend?
No, but I watched it before.
Okay, yeah, we were just on last weekend. So now that we were on last weekend at 10, we're on this weekend at 11.
Okay. All right. I'll have to catch it.
What channel is that on?
It's
A&E.
Yeah, they're Law and Order reruns and house flipping shows, apparently.
There you go.
I love that. Love that.
All right,
Right in between some SBU episodes.
Dun dun.
Sounds perfect.
Dun dun.
Zombie house flipping crime scene there. All right.
Crime scene of the crime.
Picnic in the Park is coming up May 25th. We're going to do, I think it's our 8th annual Picnic in the Park. I forget what year.
That's going to be a great event. I mean, I attended event number 6 and event number 4.
Wow, you have a good memory. Just know the number.
I do know the numbers.
Right.
I'm pretty good with numbers. And I would like to have attended 8, but it is in conflict with the West Palm Beach Dave Matthews show.
So Picnic in the Park at 11 o'clock, from 11 to 3.
What park?
Fred Howard Park.
Which is?
It's technically Tarpon Springs, so over on the Pinellas side.
So you can check out the event, then you can hit the sponge docks,
beach.
maybe even take a dolphin cruise, a wild dolphin cruise.
Or go to the beach. Really nice beach.
Take your bikes, Pinellas Trail.
Pinellas Trail. You can bike from Tarpon to Dunedin, do a brewery hop there, and then end up in Safety Harbor. And then you can end your night on their beautiful downtown.
Either way, we're going to feed you lunch. We're going to grill all the goods. So come hang out with us, have a little fun, have a little games, ride your bike, whatever you want to do.
And we still have pumpkins left, though you can get a free pumpkin from our pumpkin patch. What? We don't have pumpkins left from the pumpkin event?
We don't have any pumpkins left.
They lined the hallway.
I don't think they'd be good anymore, bud.
We had them for a long time, but they're not good anymore.
We didn't turn them into, we didn't can them?
A couple, but no, we didn't can them. We just pureed them.
Oh.
It's good for the dogs.
We actually had listings. I don't know if we're going to have time. Want to talk about a couple of them?
I don't know. We haven't heard the music bed come in
All
yet.
right. These are brand new. These aren't even on the market. They will be today.
3634 Dickens Drive in Holiday, Florida.
Oh, quickly.
$225,000, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, starter house. It is a very good price for Holiday.
That's an investor house.
6101 Dublin Drive, Newport Richie, $160,000. Where are these pricings coming from?
Investor house, brand new.
Two bedrooms, 1 bathroom. These houses prices are insane. 19211 Pelican Ridge Lane. This is in New Tampa, 2004 build. $615,000, but you get 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, beautiful gable front, beautiful landscaping.
All right, our out-there number is 813-377-2775 if you want more information. We're out of time. 813-377. You have to watch it if you're not. 813-377-2775. Live where you live, we're going to fix it. Welcome home. We'll see you next week.